Hey, I'm going to give you a tour of DevPanel. DevPanel is a dashboard or control panel that helps you deploy and manage your sites in your own AWS account. It sets up your AWS account and lets you deploy and manage sites in that account. It uses Terraform and Ansible to deploy infrastructure and applications in your account. Okay, let me show you how DevPanel works. You can log in with GitHub, Bitbucket, or GitLab. I'm going to log in with GitHub account here. These are team workspaces that you're going to see. These are workspaces you're part of or workspaces you own. And let me show you how you can create workspaces and link them to your AWS account. So workspaces are where teams work together on one or more sites or projects. And let's take a look at how this works. So when you're creating a workspace, you'll give it a name first. And so right now, the workspace is not connected to any AWS account. So you cannot deploy any apps here. So we have to first connect an AWS account to this workspace. You can start with step 0. It's just a video showing you the process of linking accounts together. Step 1, you basically have to make sure you have an AWS account and then just click through these steps. You log into your AWS account and then you'll click through to run a CloudFormation template and they'll generate your AWS keys and link them to DevPanel. You click through, click, click, click. And these are your AWS keys that are generated and then automatically copied over to DevPanel. So this takes about 5 minutes and then both the accounts are linked. Now that the accounts are linked, you have to specify the size of the infrastructure you want. You can pick the region you want and the size and number of servers in your cluster. These are the desired and maximum number of servers that are used for auto-scaling your cluster. And you can specify the size of the servers used in the cluster and the size of the database. And agree that you're not going to mess with the account and click to create the cluster. This is when you can go get a cup of tea. But this is the only time you have to wait about half an hour for anything. Okay, we're ready to create new applications now. To create applications, you first have to link a repo with DevPanel, and that's where projects come in. So before you can create applications, you have to map your repo to a project. For development, a lot of teams like to use GitFlow. So DevPanel supports GitFlow out of the box. But you can also use trunk-based development if you like. To map your repo to DevPanel, you'll start by creating a project. Give it the basic information and select GitHub, Bitbucket, or GitLab. Here we'll pick GitHub and link your account to DevPanel. Then you can create a new repo or pick an existing repo from your account. If we pick an existing repo, here we'll pick a WordPress repo. You'll have to map the develop, release, and master branches and specify which type of app you're building. And then you can click next to build the app. But let's go back a bit and look at how you create a new application like WordPress. So to create a new app, you select create a new repo, type in the name of the repo, select the type of the application, and click next. And when you create the new app, DevPanel will create the repo in your account and map it to DevPanel. In minutes, you'll come to this page where you'll see the 3 branches. But you'll see that none of the branches are deployed. That means that your code is mapped in DevPanel, but There are no applications built from that code yet. To build an application from this branch, you have to deploy this branch. So let's look at that next. Okay, let's take a look at how we build application from branches. So we start by selecting the branch we want to deploy, and then pick the source of the database and files. You can have it create the database and file from scratch, or import them from file or URL. Here we'll just have it create the database and files from scratch. And you can choose to lock the site if you want. So we'll go ahead and lock the site and confirm to deploy this app. Because we use containers for deploying apps, it only takes a few minutes to build and deploy the app. So here you can see it took about a minute to deploy this WordPress site. For each of the site, you get the site URL and the tool URLs. We'll click the site URL to go to the site. And since we had locked this site, we get the access lock prompt. And because this is the first time we're going to the WordPress URL, we get to set up WordPress. So we'll click through this form and log in as admin. And here we get the WordPress admin panel. And here's our WordPress site. Going back to DevPanel, we can then go to PhpMyAdmin. This is pointing to the apps database. PhpMyAdmin, you can manage your database from anywhere using just a browser. Now let me show you VS Code. This is Code Server. It's a version of Visual Studio Code IDE that runs completely in a browser. So you've got full IDE in your browser. It comes with a built-in terminal, so you don't need to deal with SSH or deal with SSH keys. You're dropped in your home directory where you have access to all your code. And it's preloaded with all the development tools like Drush, WP, CLI, and Composer. So you don't have to install anything, it's ready to go. And what's cool is whatever changes you make here, you can see those changes right away on your site without actually committing your code back to Git. So your changes are real time. So it's like having a local development environment in the cloud. You can get to your repo from the Code tab, create pull request from there, or jump to your branch like this. You can export your database and files if you want to save them offline. And when you export your database, for instance, we give you a link to download the file, but we also take care of the security by expiring the link in an hour automatically. This prevents those data leaks that you hear about in the news. You can unlock the site from here, and you can delete the site from the danger zone. Before we delete the site, let's take a look at how you can create a feature branch from this develop branch. So let's take a look at how we deal with branches in DevPanel. There's actually no limit to the number of feature branches you can create or build. It all depends on what you want to do. If you're familiar with Git flow, you know we can create feature branches from develop. So let's do that here. Let's go to GitHub and create feature one branch from develop. When we go back, we see that DevPanel sees that new branch right away. To build out that branch, we go to the feature branches and deploy that branch from here. You can pick what database and files to use. And since we had cloned this branch from develop, we'll just clone the database and files from develop site too. With this, DevPanel will clone the database and files from the develop site we had deployed earlier. Click Next. Click Confirm and Deploy. And in a couple of minutes, we'll have Feature 1 site up and running. You'll see the Feature 1 branch here. and the 3 URLs for this branch. And when we go to use the Feature One site, you'll notice that we didn't have to set up this WordPress site. That's because we had copied over developed sites, database, and files. So this site is just a clone of the developed site. This site also has its own PhpMyAdmin. This instance of PhpMyAdmin points to this site's database and its own instance of VS Code IDE, which points to this site's codebase. And notice that when we click on Open VS Code, we don't get prompted for any username and password. That's because we use JWT tokens behind the scenes for security. This goes quickly, but if you look carefully, you'll see all the security at work here. After all the security checks are done, you get dropped in VS Code. Okay, when you're done, you can delete the site. Just go here in the danger zone and delete the site. When you've deleted the site, the branch is not gone. You can still recreate the site if you like. To recap, with DevPanel, you get a point-and-click, easy-to-use control panel with pre-built applications that you can launch with a few clicks, create as many dev test live environments. It comes with browser-based development tools like Visual Studio Code, so you can work from virtually anywhere using any PC with no need to set up local dev environments. You can manage all your projects, clients, and sites with just one DevPanel account. Because all your sites are in your own AWS account, you're just paying for the dashboard. And depending on how many sites you're running, this makes for a huge cost savings. You pay AWS directly, and you pay them for only what you use. Plus, with DevPanel, your sites are running on AWS's enterprise-grade infrastructure that almost all big companies rely on. It's auto-scaling and fully managed by AWS, so your infrastructure will hardly ever go down. Best of all, you don't need to know any AWS to use DevPanel. That's it. Now go check out DevPanel. It's free to try, and you don't need an AWS account to see how it works.